morning to all my dear students. Dear students, in our last biology class, what we discussed, do you remember that one? Okay, then have to say together. Yes, we discussed about different uses of microorganisms. Is it, children? In that uses, we already discussed about some microorganisms which helps for nitrogen fixation. So what is that nitrogen fixation? In our last class, I told you about nitrogen fixation. I will say next class. So today, I am going to teach you about nitrogen fixation. What is N2, children? That is a symbol of nitrogen. N2, nitrogen fixation. Listen, children. First, we have to check what is nitrogen fixation. What is that process? That we need to check. We all know that nitrogen gas we can see in our environment tremendously. That means compared to other gases, we can see nitrogen gas in our environment. Almost 78% of nitrogen gas that are present in our environment. Okay, so actually plants and animals, they cannot directly absorb nitrogen gas from the atmosphere. Okay, there is no capacity for the absorption of nitrogen gas from the atmosphere. So what we will do, children? Because without nitrogen gas, we cannot prepare protein for our body. Okay, so nitrogen, that is very important to synthesize the protein. Okay, so why we need nitrogen, children? Yes, of course, we need nitrogen for synthesis of protein. Okay, so what is nitrogen fixation, children? That is conversion of nitrogen into different nitrogenous compounds like nitrate, ammonia, like that. That you will learn in next class. But you should understand different nitrogenous compound. Nitrogenous compound will make from nitrogen gas. Okay, that conversion of nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds, that process we called as nitrogen fixation. Okay, so next we need to check how this nitrogen can fix in our environment. Okay, so for that you should learn nitrogen cycle. Okay, without nitrogen cycle we cannot understand how nitrogen is fixing in our environment. Understand? So now we learned about what is nitrogen fixation. That is conversion of nitrogen into nitrogenous compound. Okay, that process we call nitrogen fixation. Then we also discussed about why nitrogen is fixing in our environment. Because plants and animals cannot absorb nitrogen directly from the environment. That's why they need to convert. Okay, that is the reason for conversion of nitrogen, or we have to say nitrogen fixation. So listen, children, next we need to check about how this nitrogen is fixing in our environment through our nitrogen cycle. So let's check. One of the main important function of microorganism is what, children? Yes, nitrogen fixation. So through the nitrogen cycle only we can understand how nitrogen is fixing in our environment. So now we are going to learn about nitrogen cycle. Okay. So students, we all know that one of the main important function of microorganism, that is nitrogen fixation. Okay, so which microorganism will help for nitrogen fixation? We already discussed in our 7th grade one bacteria which helps for nitrogen fixation. Anybody remember that one? Okay, yes, Aslaha, Shifa, Sana, Meherin and Fatima, they are checking their memory. Then you have to say which microorganisms will help for nitrogen fixation. We already discussed in our 7th grade. Yes, of course, that is rhizobium bacteria. Okay, so rhizobium bacteria which helps for nitrogen fixation. Okay, this is a one bacteria. That means this is one microbes or microorganism which helps for the fixation of nitrogen in our environment. Okay, So next we need to check where this rhizobium bacteria we can see, children. Yes, we can see rhizobium bacteria in leguminous plant. Did you heard about that one? Leguminous plants. It is actually leguminous plants are type of pulses. Okay, pulses, pea, beans, like that, different pulses we can say like that, leguminous plants. In the root of leguminous plants we can see some bubble like structure that we can call it as nodules of leguminous plants. Okay, in nodes of leguminous plants we can see this rhizobium bacteria. This rhizobium bacteria mainly help for the fixation of nitrogen in environment. Okay, but students, you should think, if there is no leguminous plants in our environment, how nitrogen is fixing, children? There are different ways for the fixation of nitrogen. Here I discussed only one way, that is in roots of leguminous plants we can see rhizobium bacteria which helps for the fixation of nitrogen in our environment. Likewise, some blue-green algae are present in our soil, okay, and that also helps for the fixation of nitrogen. Some blue-green algae. This also what, children? This also type of a microbes, is it? So, now we discussed about two different types of microbes. What are they? Rhizobium bacteria and blue-green algae. Okay, blue-green algae which are present in our soil, that also helps for the fixation of nitrogen. If there is no leguminous plant, which one will work? Yes, of course, blue-green algae. It works for the fixation of nitrogen in environment. Now we discussed about different microbes, they are fixing the nitrogen. Next we need to check how they are fixing the nitrogen. Okay, actually we know that in our atmosphere has 78% of nitrogen that are present in our atmosphere. Okay, when we are checking about the atmospheric nitrogen, we know that how many percentage of nitrogens are present in our atmosphere? Yes, of course, 78, almost 78% of nitrogen we can see in our atmosphere. Check how this nitrogen can absorb our atmosphere. We can check through the nitrogen cycle. Okay, students, atmosphere has 78% of nitrogen. And we need to check how this nitrogen is entering into our environment, okay, from the atmosphere. So, actually we know that some nitrogen fixing bacteria like rhizobium or different types of algae which can absorb the nitrogen from the atmosphere. Okay, some blue-green algae that also absorb the nitrogen from the atmosphere, nitrogen gas from the atmosphere. And this rhizobium bacteria and different types of blue-green algae that converts this nitrogen gas into nitrogenous compounds. Okay, that nitrogenous compounds only can use by nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds. Okay, nitrogenous compounds which are fixed into the soil. Okay, nitrogenous compounds that are fixing in soil. Okay, now nitrogen is there in soil by the help of rhizobium bacteria and some blue-green algae which converts nitrogen gas into nitrogenous compound which are fixed in the soil now. Okay, and also lightning from the atmosphere. Okay, lightning from the atmosphere that also reach into our environment by rain. That time also nitrogenous compounds, when lightning is happening, this nitrogen that break down into nitrogen atoms. Okay, and that nitrogen atoms also reach into our environment by rain. Okay, so now nitrogen are there in our environment, maybe through the lightning process or maybe bacteria and algae which are absorbing the nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and it converts into nitrogenous compounds and fix into the soil. After that, what will happen? Yes, of course, when they reach in our soil, who will absorb that nitrogenous compounds? Yes, of course, our plants will absorb. Okay, so here plants are there. Okay, plants which absorb what, children? Which absorb nitrogenous compound from the soil. Okay, and we know that plants and animals need nitrogen for preparing the protein. Okay, so these plants that are eaten by cow, whatever it is, some animals that are eaten by these plants. Okay, so animals which are consuming the plants, because of that animals also can get what? Yes, of course, nitrogenous compound. After that, if the plants or animals, when they will die or when they are doing the excretion process, that nitrogenous compounds also again reach into the soil. Okay, again that reach into the soil. Because of why? Yes, of course, decomposers are there. Okay, decomposers or decomposition is happening. Who are the decomposers? Students, microorganisms. That decomposers, decomposition is done. After that, again this nitrogenous compound which enter into the soil. Okay, and some bacteria like dinitrifying bacteria which change this, which convert this nitrogenous compound again into nitrogen gas, and it again reaches to the atmosphere. Okay, and it again reaches into the atmosphere. So this cycle is completed. That means we know that atmosphere has nitrogen gas. That gas is reached in our environment, maybe through lightning or different type of bacteria or algae which can absorb the nitrogen molecule, and it reaches into our environment, and that converted into nitrogenous compound in soil, right? And that nitrogenous compound will absorb by plants. Is it, children? Animals also eating that nitrogenous compounds, and when they are die or when the excretion process is done, that time again that nitrogenous compounds reaches into the soil. Okay, again it reaches into here, and also some denitrifying bacteria which convert this nitrogenous compound into again nitrogen gas, and that gas is gone to our atmosphere again. So cycle is completed now. Clear, students? This is a most important cycle, nitrogen cycle. All should have to draw the nitrogen cycle and learn thoroughly. This is an activity for you. Draw the nitrogen cycle neatly in your notebook and label the different parts, and we can discuss more about in our next GCS. So all should have to draw the diagram neatly. And this topic question for you: what is the use of denitrifying bacteria? So all should have to say the answer within 1 hour, and we can meet in our next class. Till then, take care. Bye bye.